Leah and Diana are here to talk about Clowns Without Borders. I'm sure you'll find this discussion of this wonderful organization fascinating. But first, yeah, I know. How does he do it?
Video?
You're on.
Oh, yeah, si come grazie. Nesti kan du bad. Yeah. Oh, I Thank you. Wagriwa Alexander, Diana, and Barry. Yay! Now, what was it? The circus likas på Broadsea, how you say, the oh. Yeah. Papa, okay. See, I think I told the bow. See if we can butter the bohu and some approach the bohu woohoo bohu.
Yeah.
Si fica parte del bohu na plaatje woohoo en trotsje. Eeuw. Oh ja. Eeuw. Secret at the stretch. Alright. No problem. Dai dopo si questi capoli che dopo che da bohu se na plače. Woohoo. Internazio? Yeah. Ja, så get to the bohu se na plače. Woohoo. Internazio? Merci. Bombe, how you say if you heard of English, yeah? Yo, like Alex the Jester on Facebook. I don't speak English. I'm here for Clowns Without Borders. What you saw was just, well, we just like to communicate in that special clown way. And I don't mean birthday parties with balloons and big shoes. Red noses are cool though. And I love to go on a limb and just put the bar this high and make this claim that at another time, when we have more time, I will show you the secrets of nonverbal communication. 2 horrible words. I call it primal talk. And primal talk is what Clowns Without Borders does when they go, as I do, to countries all over the world where this is the language we have. I think you can see the feelings, the emotions, the communication. And the last little thing I'm going to say, as far as putting the bar up here, I claim that clowns can show you physical communication that can help you connect with people. Well, you guys all have got brilliant social skills, but you might know a colleague. You might know a colleague who can use a little help at connecting faster and with primal talk. All I want to see if I can show you is to connect quicker with people, be more empathetic, a better friend, find love, and save the world. That's about it. I think on saving the world, listen to what Lee and Diane have to say about Clowns Without Borders.
Hi everyone, I'm Diana. I'm the Vice President of the Board of Clowns Without Borders and the former Director. We're a basically volunteer-run organization, so we pay very little to an administrative team to keep us going, but in the US here we are basically volunteer-run. And Leah is one of our volunteers and performers. And we want to explain what Clowns Without Borders is and just raise awareness about what clown is, because it's not, I don't think, what you guys are expecting from some conversations we had earlier. But we wanted to bring Alex in just because he would be a fun little bit of entertainment piece that would be appropriate for you guys at Google. So we thought he was going to be a little nice piece of entertainment. So I'm going to let Leah take it away.
So thank you, Alex. Yeah, we're just going to kind of run through what Clowns Without Borders does. I'm comfortable, especially since it's, you know, not the most biggest crowd I've ever worked with. If you guys have questions in the middle, you can feel free to interrupt me. I'm cool with that, or we can ask afterwards or whatever. So we're Clowns Without Borders, basically no child without a smile. That's our aim. This is a picture of what we're not. So that's not us, that's not Alex. My grandfather's in there, but no, he's not. But to give you a better idea of who you are, of who we are, is this. And so we do wear makeup sometimes and clown noses, although not necessarily, and we're more kind of a pedestrian sort of clown. We find that sort of more approachable in the places that we go and the people that we work with. So this is another example of more the kind of the clown that we are. And so here's just another picture. This is basically a better description of what we look like. So you can see we still look funny, but not like creepy funny. Well, yeah, I don't think any of them are creepy. Maybe like bordering. Depends, I guess, what time of day and where they show up. But yeah, okay. And here's just another example of who we are. So this is, we work all over the world. And this is South Africa, Clowns Without Borders, and Diana will interrupt me if I get this wrong, but we worked a lot as an organization in South Africa, and then in South Africa they started their own Clowns Without Borders, and so this is them. I think performing probably at a school. Basically what Clowns Without Borders does is we use simplicity, surprise, and sanctuary. And so where is this taken?
Sudan.
This is in Sudan. Now Diana is going to talk a little bit just about the history of Clowns Without Borders and that kind of thing.
So you've seen a few photos which give you a little bit of an idea of what we do. We mainly perform for children living in crisis situations and then also their communities. So it could be their families, their caregivers, schools, refugee camps. We'll go into that a little bit more in a minute. It was actually founded in Spain. Now we're comprised of 9 and counting organizations around the world. So Spain is where it started in 1993. It was founded by a man by the name of Tortel Patrona, and he ran the first non-animal oriented circus in Spain. And the first trip was to a Croatian refugee camp, and it literally started with a caravan of vans. They were invited in to come into the refugee camp in 1993, and they took a caravan of vans from Barcelona and set up shop and performed for thousands of people at a time. So the first performances were actually like this one, which you can see. This is actually in Bhutan, but with thousands of kids, like oceans of children. In 1996, Clowns Without Borders was founded by a man named Moshe Cohen. He lives out in San Francisco, where clowns, I think, are a little bit more accepted, maybe than here on the East Coast. And now you can see the list of countries, and the list is growing. We're starting up organizations in Finland, Colombia, Australia, Brazil. The list goes on. So our mission is twofold. We first seek to improve the psychological conditions in crisis situations, bringing humor and laughter through volunteer artist performances, as well as workshops with children and educators. And then we also strive to raise awareness, and so that's what we're doing here today. So we ask all of our volunteers when they're not in the field, because they might only be in the field for 1 week or 3 weeks at a time during a year, we ask them to promote awareness back in their home cities, wherever it may be around the world. So my most recent trip was actually to India, and I thought I would put this picture in. We were actually working on the construction sites where all of the tech buildings are being built outside of Delhi. Possibly a Google office, I'm not sure. But a lot of like car companies, cell phone companies, and those kinds of things. And we did performances for the construction workers, the migrant construction workers, and their families who live there. So there's these makeshift schools that are set up and daycares that are set up in and among the construction. So you have like a huge giant building 20 stories high and then a little tiny room where these children are educated while they're living there. So we would go in and we would do performances there.
So I think the sort of main thing, if you had to just sum it up, what we do is we promote laughter, and we try to bring levity and laughter to places around the world that we've been invited to. So we usually go to a place like we maybe have a partnership with a sister organization or something like that, or we see a need and we go and say, okay, you know, there's like some, you know, maybe a refugee camp, or we've been to Haiti after the earthquake and before the earthquake and that kind of thing, and just try to bring laughter and levity. And I guess I personally think that's really important just because it's like a way to connect, and like I know when I'm feeling down, like if I can just have a good laugh, it's sort of like, it's like a little shock to the system and kind of turns things around, and then I just feel a lot better. So, so that's like in sum what we do. And then this is a picture of, that's Tim Cunningham, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. On the bottom, I don't know the name of who's on top, but this was just a little girl, and we were doing two highs, as we call when you put someone on your shoulders, and I think kind of just the expression and her body language kind of shows it all, but I think it probably made her day. And so now I'm going to show just a series of pictures of sort of a typical, like, what happens when we arrive at a place to go give a performance. So sometimes the kids have been warned ahead of time, like you're going to have some performance or something, sometimes not. Sometimes we've been there the year before, so they know. It kind of all depends, depending on the situation, if we've been there before or not.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
Clowns exist in every culture. There's some kind of jester or joker, but we are definitely a foreign idea to these kids when we show up. So, when you enter, it helps to partner with an organization like Leah said, but also the reaction we can get can be anything from just blank stares to what Leah's about to show you. So you never know what you're going to get when you show up to a location.
Sometimes grumpy, but usually we turn that around. That's happened. So here's an example of sort of more typical what happens. So these are kids in school. They know something's about to happen. And then here they come. And then they've arrived. So more often than not, actually, what we're doing is being like, push back. We needed space for a show. But so we're pretty usually well received when we go to places, and I think well recognized that like this is kind of a time for relaxation, especially in places where people are experiencing an enormous amount of stress. And this is a chance to just sort of let go and like not have to be in charge and not have to like think about whatever. I mean, the stresses are, what meal is coming next, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah.
Sometimes people will set up ropes for the children to stay behind, and we're always like, no, let them come in. But, the teachers will set up ropes and that kind of thing. So sometimes they're corralled, but it doesn't always work.
I've set up a rope before,
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. Like, it's too many kids. Got to keep them back. But it's such a joy to be able to just, like, I don't know, this kind of experience is, for me, been absolutely amazing. We have no limits. We also clown for UN workers. So there's a picture of some UN workers that have put on some clown noses. And I've been to Haiti a number of times, and there's often UN workers there. So I wasn't there for this exact moment, but had a very similar experience multiple times over. So we try to leap over different boundaries, sort of regardless of what they are. Basically, we'll clown for anyone, doesn't really matter.
So because we have so many organizations around the world, we're able to get into or be invited to so many different places. And we really try to choose which country makes sense to be invited where. So Leah's going to talk about a trip that she did, but there was a lot of conversation about, do we send US clowns into certain areas? Is it safer to send maybe Spanish clowns into certain areas because of some political issues? We try to go only where we're invited, so usually we're working with a partner organization. This is an updated list as of 2012. We haven't updated it for 2013. We're working on that right now, but we've added to this list a few places. Palestine. Because it is on there. Yeah, so we've added to this list a little bit this year, and it continues to grow. Unfortunately, we're always going to places where there are crises, and crises keep popping up. So unfortunately, it probably will continue to grow, but hopefully it will shrink more and more.
I guess actually I don't know how to go back to the previous slide, but just touching on what Diana said and where we go, we often partner with sister or other organizations, but sometimes we go on trips that we don't, and so we're allowed to go into areas that the UN says, like, don't go in there, it's too dangerous and too scary. And I don't know, I guess because our organization is basically run by clowns, except for Diana. Thank God, that's why we keep her around, keep us like on our toes, But we're like, okay, no one else is allowed to go there? Well, we'll go. So I'll show some pictures of that later and kind of go into more depth. But for me, that's been sort of really an awesome part about working with the organization, that to have truly like no limits set on that. So sometimes there are limits when we're working with a sister organization, like we're kind of under their umbrella, so like, nope, no go there. But often we're sort of just allowed to go wherever we want, and we do that, and we're well received. So this is just an example of like we work with all ages. But mostly we end up working with the young and the curious, and this is Jan, and he and I used to do circus work together, and we've not been on a Clowns Without Borders trip together yet, but where is this?
Indonesia.
This isn't, as I was going to say, this is in Indonesia. So this is like sort of what I imagine, or this has been my similar experience after a show, kind of hanging around afterwards and playing with the kids one-on-one or that kind of thing. And this picture is just to demonstrate that we work with people living in all different kinds of conditions. So sort of going off of what I said earlier, you know, whether it's in a refugee camp or whether it's just an area that's just experienced some environmental disaster or something like that, regardless of what it is and where it is, we try to go there and bring some levity to the situation. So just to give an idea, I'm going to show you a bunch of pictures, but the kind of places that we perform, hospitals, refugee camps, homes, camps, hospitals, and prisons. Here's a hospital that I think this is probably in Haiti. Mm-hmm. We go into community centers and churches and that kind of place. This is a school setting. I was on a trip to Palestine earlier this year, and we went to a school that was 700 girls in a refugee camp, and so kind of like just a lot of kids, you know. We got trampled afterwards, but in a good way, in a happy way, happy trampling. If you can imagine such a thing. There's such a thing out there as being like trampled in happiness. And then this is an example of a refugee camp. And
School.
Another school performance. And so something else that we do is we do workshops for kids and also for their caregivers. So I've done that work in Haiti a few times. So I guess the last trip I was on in Haiti, we were working with people with Haitians who were working in their community centers, and so it was kind of like a trade, but we were also just sort of like helping them with games and that kind of thing that they could bring to their community center. And then they kind of used us as like advertising. So we would go to their community center because they were having trouble bringing in the kids who are a little bit older into the community center because it kind of like wasn't cool. But it turns out that we're kind of cool. So we went into the community centers and we would put on this great show, and then that would kind of draw in some of the older kids. Because in the community centers are safer, and there's opportunity for reading and that kind of thing, and whatever kind of work that they saw fit. And so that was really great.
In Haiti, we're doing a lot of work, especially, we've been working in Haiti since 2006, so long before the earthquake, but since the earthquake, we've been working with folks who were displaced from their original professions and are now really what they're left with is rebuilding their communities. And so that's the type of community work that we're doing, is teaching folks who might have not ever worked with children before except for their own kids or whatever it may be, and giving them tools to create community and work with kids in an educational setting.
Yeah. So this is those people. So I think this was the trip before I went on, but I know a bunch of those folks. So working with the same people year after year sometimes as well. So that's building relationships, and that's really fun and rewarding. So this is, now these are just a bunch of my pictures. So just going to give you a little bit, and again, you can interrupt me, it's okay. I'm Jewish, that's like we do in my house. No? Okay, I don't know. I read a book once that said that's how it goes. Okay, so this is Saida, myself in the middle, and David. And this was, I don't know exactly, it was somewhere in Palestine. I'm not exactly sure where that photo was taken. But, that's why we're here today, by the way, because I teach Stephen trapeze and silks and that kind of thing, or I try to. I do my best to try and teach him how to hang from things like by his feet and elbows and that kind of thing. And so I talk a lot in class or like, you know, whatever. And so he thought, oh yeah, let's bring them here. Yeah, so this is at a school in Palestine, the West Bank, and this is like a kind of, I don't know, there's a few acts that we do, I guess you could say, that we do on a lot of different trips. And sort of going back to what Alex was saying in the beginning, so this primal talk, or that we often, our shows are nonverbal, and so that's why we're able to perform in different parts of the world. And so we call this copycat, and basically, like, I'll bring up a kid from the audience. The other kid just kind of like snuck up because it looked fun. We let him stay. But the kid with the clown nose on, and I'll put a clown nose on them, and I'll just sort of make some gestures, and then the kid will follow. And then, you know, we'll do things like, I'll like kick him in the butt or something like that. And then when he kicks me in the butt, which is like, no, because I'm an adult, that's funny. I don't know if you knew that, but that's funny. And so this is just them sort of having a great time, and their peers love it, and it sort of gives them a chance to be center stage and that kind of thing. And this is probably like one of the most intense performances that I've had. This is in Martezan, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Haiti. And Diana was on a trip that went to the same location. So to get to this location, it was like a 30, 40-minute walk uphill with places where people live.
Through people's homes.
Yeah, like kind of through people's homes, and
Literally ducking in doorways and out windows.
Like kind of going in and out to get to this space that had been created, probably like by some other NGO long ago. And I think, it was sort of like a little bit of the sensation was like being the Pied Piper, because as we were walking up, you know, first there was like 2 or 3 kids, and then there was like more, and then there was many, many, many. And people just kind of stopped what they were doing, and if they were walking by, you can see there's some women in the back who are probably going from one place to another. I remember this performance, there was a guy who had like just been bathing, and he was just like in his towel watching the show. And oh, this is a rope situation. We put that rope there. And so I guess this is just another example of how we'll sort of like go anywhere. So it took us a really long time to get there. We're carrying on this one we did stilting, so we're like carrying all this equipment on our backs, and just trying to kind of get to the location where there was enough open space to perform. And then we just had like, you know, a couple hundred people. You can kind of see they're kind of gathered all around to come watch the show. So I think I should add to that. Mm-hmm. So this was a kind of average size performance, and then this is in Palestine, a much smaller scale performance, but still larger than you guys. So this was just the kids in that town, and you know, sometimes we're, I guess being perfectly honest, we're like, oh boy, like we have to do this entire show, but there's like 15 kids or something, but they end up loving it and like having such a good time and laughing. And I'll show pictures of that in a second. And this skit is another sort of go-to, I don't know if I say that, but sometimes a skit that I guess I've done on a number of different trips. And it's, we call it Dead or Alive. So in this skit, my clown character ends up dead. And Saida's like, worried because she thinks she killed me, kind of thing. And sometimes these kind of issues can be sort of really touchy because a lot of these kids have experienced a lot of death and other issues that we might bring up in our clowning. But they love it. And sometimes we're like, we question, is that something that we should sort of bring up? But I think it's something that kind of needs that release. Like they need to be able to laugh at it in some way. And so I don't know. I was hesitant, I'll say, the first time we did this, I was like, are you sure this is a great idea? But it was, and I think it kind of continues to be, so.
Yeah, we use it a lot in South Africa where we're dealing with HIV and AIDS and where there's so much loss in the community all the time. And it just allows kids who maybe haven't expressed their feelings about death to give some expression, because then they'll start doing the skit. A lot of times when we leave a place, we hear back from the educators that the kids copy exactly what we do, and then they're doing it over and over again and making their friends laugh. So it's a well thought out skit, even though it's about death.
Oops, I pressed the letter B instead of the space bar. Oh no.
There we go.
Hey! Okay. Hey, now who's this smart pants one? This guy. Okay, so these are just some of those kids from the slide before, and Again, I guess just from the performer's perspective, you're like, oh, there's only 5, but then you see all the kids laughing, and it immediately becomes totally worth it. This is in Haiti. This was like about a month after the earthquake. This is David again. I've been on a few trips with David because I like David. The kids are just super happy, and just bringing smiles to their faces is wonderful. And we were also really surprised at how quickly we were asked to come to Haiti after the earthquake, because there's kind of the first responders, and obviously that takes priority, and that's why we wait until we're asked to come. But then there were, we had the experience over and over and over again. We were going to these kind of like makeshift hospital areas, and a lot of the doctors and nurses who were there said, who had been there like since the earthquake, or a few days after, were saying, this is the first time we've seen anyone smile in a month and a half, or whatever it was. And so I think that is why we're asked often to come places. So that's sort of an acute situation, but the example is just that sometimes like there is that need to sort of shake things up. And I think that laughter can be very healing, and that's part of the healing process and part of connecting. And so going there after the earthquake was definitely an intense experience, but we were so well received. And we also, like, there was a little girl who had, I guess she was found next to her mom who had passed, and had sort of become mute from the situation. And we played with her and sort of got her to laugh, and the nurses like reported back that then she started talking. So okay, that's a beautiful story. So it doesn't always happen that way, but I think that it kind of illustrates that that's the kind of thing that we can do, just sort of through play, and sort of we have the time. We go in there sort of like with that sort of time to make time for that kind of thing. So this is also soon after that same trip, and just working closely with the doctors and nurses, and we went often from tent to tent or from sort of site to site, and put on shows for just like a handful of people, and sometimes for people who'd been waiting for medical care for a few weeks and had just sort of been camped out waiting for some medical care, and those were bigger shows. We had a show, this was sort of an awkward experience. We had there's all this space, that's fantastic, because sometimes that's an issue, especially after the earthquake, there wasn't always space. And so we found the space, we're like, oh great, some sort of hospital setting, fantastic. So we set up the show, we're doing the show, everything's going great. And then in the middle of the show, we hear Dr. Chang, come here immediately. And we're like, oh, what's going on? And someone's rolled through the middle of our show, and we're like, oh, we're in front of the operating room. That's why the space is clear. But everyone was like, ha, ha, ha. The audience, we were clearly then we were like, oh no, we don't know. But it worked out. This is from the most recent trip to Palestine, and for me this is just about how situations can be complex, to say the least. And in this was in a refugee camp, and these are not real guns; these are toy guns, but many of them have little laser pointers on them. And sometimes during the shows, we'd be like funny skit, and they'd look down and be like, no, laser on me, and I'd be like, oh, it's uncomfortable. So and they would just have little pellets, so they're not intended to kill, but so it was I tried to collect them before the show, because I thought I'll just feel better about this, and maybe I'll be funnier if I'm not thinking about this in the back of my mind. And then I took this picture just because I kind of thought this sort of exemplifies what's happening. But I mean, it was useless because there was way more of them. It was the most fruitless thing I've ever tried to do. Give me your gun. We don't speak the same language. That thing. Instead, they'd be bing, and I'd get shot. But these are the kids that those little play guns belong to. So they're having a great time. And then we gave them their toys afterwards. So I suppose we could go into what that all means, but I'll leave that for now. And just say that what was really important is having sort of the connection and the laughter. And just allowing kids to be kids, and allowing the space for that to happen. this is a picture of child soldiers, right, in Sudan. Is this in Sudan?
Yeah.
So these are them, just kids being kids, having a good time. And this is back in Palestine. Some kids stole my nose. I mean, I let them, and they were playing with it and collecting water. And then this is in Haiti. And this is before the earthquake, and this was a kid who he had like a limp or something, and it was like an area set up for boys only. It's basically like a big cement room, but it was a place for the kids to go, for these boys to go during the day, and he was being kind of made fun of a little bit, I think, just because he had some physical ailments, and so we sort of pulled him in and made him the star of the show for this little bit, and afterwards everyone's like giving him high fives and like yay, so that was sort of a really nice experience. And so David spins the ball on his finger and gives it over to the kid, and we went, and so this place was a really nice place that, you know, they didn't have I mean, it was really just a room and outdoors, but sort of enclosed from the rest of from the outside world, I guess, a little bit, and that's a nice safe space. But unfortunately, this place was destroyed after the earthquake, which was sad and hard to go back and see that. That's all. So we are just here to tell you that we need your help, kind of spreading awareness about the organization, and this is who we are, Clowns Without Borders. You guys have questions? Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So you've talked a few times about like bringing kids up to involve them in the show in some ways.
Yeah.
And so while I don't perform in any way, but at times, you know, when I'm like teaching something, I'm dealing with different kids, and the worry I always have is the problem of singling ones out seems like it has the great potential to make the rest like feel left out. Is some of what you're saying, like with the spinning ball one, it sounds like to some extent kids could just act better than I like expect of humans, because sometimes the response to singling someone out is, you know, to shun them. So obviously in that case it didn't happen. Is it just you see that more, or do you have
I think it's like sort of from just experiencing clowning and performing, like you kind of learn like who to go to, and I mean, mistakes are made, like I'm not, you know, that's the truth, but I think that sort of the more that you do it, you kind of figure out, okay, this is like a good choice. I can see from their facial expression and sort of from the way they're reacting. I mean, on our trips, more often than not, we have like everyone wanting, you know, like kind of the first thing, so like, oh, I want to be up there too, I want to be up there too, like why, you know, choose me. So I think that's more of our problem, which I think is a good thing. So, you know, it's like we can't bring all the kids up, but, you know, c'est la vie, life isn't fair. But we do sometimes, like we do a dance. I've done like a kind of a dance skit, and we get like a man and a woman up. So sort of like we usually get like the caretakers of the kids, and sort of, and sometimes they're a little resistant, you know, like they don't want to get up in front of everyone, but we like pull them up. But then they like, you know, they always end up having a good time. I mean, if someone's, you know, I guess if someone's resistant, we just back off and go to the next person.
And we often sometimes will find out from a teacher, or a teacher will tell us, like, please have that child come up, or don't ask that child to come up. So especially in places where we're going back to, where we've worked with them before.
Yeah. More questions? I like questions. It's more interactive. Ask them.
Comments?
Obviously, many of these places you're going are politically very tense. I would imagine there are a lot of places that you would go where doing something like parading up through people's houses to get people to try to follow you would arouse a lot of suspicions about who you were and what you were doing there that some people might not take very kindly. And also, like your story about the guns certainly makes me think that even in some situations, just performing where you're out there and potentially a target, you know, would be inherently dangerous. So I'm just curious about what kind of preparations do you make in these kind of situations to make sure that you're going to stay safe? And also, I mean, do you work with security forces? forces in these situations? UN people, I mean, whoever's governing, you know, in the area. How do you make the politics work?
Yeah, can I answer the first
Yeah,
one,
sure.
the first part, and then
Yeah.
one thing I'll say is, remember I said like at the beginning, I was like, sometimes people are a bit grumpy. So I've definitely been in places where you know, there's like some of the, it seems to me like some of the guys in charge are a little like, okay, like what's this, you know? But I'll say that like once we get people laughing, like the mass majority just seems to just like get right in, and like those very, I mean, usually it's more received where we're like, yay, you know, but in those occasions when something like that happens, once we kind of get them laughing and we just connect with them, I think that those sort of, I don't know, limitations or those tensions fall away. They seem to just kind of go, and everyone kind of like relaxes, and I think there's just this general understanding, we're just here to have a good time and connect and make people laugh. And then I think it's, doesn't feel like imposing so much. It's just sort of like joining them and an excuse for a good time.
So to answer the safety question, we do put a lot of care into the safety of things, and some of the folks who work with us and who maybe aren't the performer types have worked for like Doctors Without Borders, or we have a war photographer who does a lot of the photography for some of the shows. So we understand kind of the precautions that we have to take. When we're going into a really fragile area or a new area, like say Haiti right after the earthquake. So we had worked in Haiti through very kind of informal connections before the earthquake. And then after the earthquake, we now only go there with a strong connection to an organization that invites us. And we get a safety briefing before we go there. We have curfews. We really don't have much freedom when we're traveling around. It's not like we're going to eat in a fine dining hotel or something like that, but we're actually usually home and really exhausted and going to sleep by 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. So, you know, we're usually not out after dark and things like that. If it's appropriate, we're escorted to a location. The parading through houses, that actually was in Martesant, and that happens often, and that's because that's what we were told was going to work. So we're asking local people or people who have been living in the communities for a long time, you know, how do we promote everyone to come to this, or how, you know, where is the most appropriate space to perform is another big one. You know, sometimes I've been on a couple trips where it's actually not safe for our performers to perform. So that's something we always try to have what we call a logistician, or somebody like me who doesn't need to be up there performing, but is looking out for the clowns, making sure that they're hydrated, making sure that they're wearing closed-toed shoes, because a lot of the places we perform in have glass all over the ground and things like that. So, you know, we take stock of both the audience and being aware of, you know, how much we're intruding on their personal life, but we also have to make sure that the clowns are safe because they can't do their work otherwise.
I just wanted to add, I think that's a great question. And you do something really neat that you've done so many times you forgot to explain it. Can I sort of break it down into salami slices that news you can use? What clowns do, and what anyone can do, is you go in there with this spirit, it's a joyful spirit. You present a little tiniest thing. It could be just a little gesture, a bow, a smile, but you put yourself out there. I even did it out there. This is not easy. This was a little bit of I wouldn't call it a crisis situation. But when I try to make people laugh at 12 o'clock on a business day, when you all got all this working, this is not an easy audience. But I didn't give up. You just put a little bit out. And the part that Leah does, and I do, and anyone's been doing for a while, is you pause after the first 3 seconds. Give a little something, and wait to get an invitation. And that's breaking it down. That's news you can use. That's what you can all do a little more starting today, is you just put yourself out there and then wait and respond to what happens, as opposed to agenda, A, B, C, D. And I'm pretty sure when you go into those places,
yeah, we take note of what the atmosphere is. So sometimes we show up somewhere, there's a few folks who tell this story better than I do, but you know, sometimes we'll show up to a hospital and a child has just passed away. or we'll finish a performance and while we were performing, a child has passed away in the other room. So, we do rely on people to give us the cues, and we do soft clowning and we do loud clowning. So there are times when it's appropriate to come out there with stilts and, drums and trombones and all these different things. And then there's also times when it's appropriate to do just very quiet clowning and pulling a handkerchief out of somebody's ear, not even making any sounds at all. And that's more like the hospital type setting. And then the loud clowning is more like the refugee camp, where you have to make these giant movements in order to get to the 1,000th kid, 100 rows back.
And I think sort of like, regardless of what safety precautions we do take, I guess, there's this inherent risk. But I guess I have always felt I've arrived feeling like a little cautious. But then I think like once I get going, you can just kind of, you just feel what's going on in the room or in the space. And I always feel safe, I have to say. Like, I always feel like, I don't know, everyone's smiling at me. Like, what could go wrong, So I mean.
It's a good question, though.
Yeah, but I think it is an important question. And it definitely comes up. And I think, as we go into spaces, we're like, especially if it's like unfamiliar to us, we're like, oh, like, what's this, And you just kind of got to go with it, I think. But I think also what Diana was saying is really understanding what's like appropriate for the situation, and that's a huge part of it. And it's the same thing of like knowing who do you pull or not pull or that kind of thing. And I think that just comes with the people that are on the trip and hoping that you connect really well with your fellow performers and connecting well with the people you're working with. Stephen, did you have a question? Oh, behind Stephen. Stephen, we're waiting for you. It's like you have a low priority.
So you mentioned in every culture there's a clown or a jester type of role. Do you ever seek them out or work with them, or do they come to see your shows?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we try to do training with adults who are interested. So depending on what our connections are to that community, I think one thing we try to find out are like what's funny, what triggers funny in that culture. So it might be, that gender roles is a really funny thing to play with because it's such a regimented order or something like that. So we'll find somebody in the community to help us walk through that. Like Leah said, we have a lot of different pieces that we do on a lot of different trips, so kind of our standard bits. But every time a group of performers arrives in country, the performance gets tweaked with over and over and over again. And it's never the same.
Like when the last trip I went on to Haiti with the folks that we were working with, we put some of those people that you saw in one of those photos, we put a show on together with them, and sort of the hope was that they could then put on their own show after we left. And so we would sort of improv and we created a show together, and some of the scenes that they came up with, I mean, they were just like hysterical, and like we wouldn't have thought of it. Or we did stuff around like sanitization once in Haiti, and like just different things, kind of depending on sort of what comes up. So yeah,
the goal of Clowns Without Borders is definitely not to exist, and for performers in their own countries to be able to be reaching large amounts of children. And for there to be no crisis, of course. So we wouldn't we wouldn't need to be performing.
No crisis.
Leah, time for one more question.
Stephen.
I don't have a question.
He was saying it was time.
Oh. Okay, is there any final, last, like really short question?
Where do you teach him to hang from his elbows?
Good question.
Oh, okay. So maybe I'll spend a minute. I teach at Aircraft, which is in Somerville. So my day job is a trapeze coach and aerials. And I'm also about to get my master's in social work, and I'm going to start working at Children's Hospital doing in the clown care unit. So kind of more the micro clowning. Yeah, we're going to, kids need happiness here too, but a different program, but also cool. So all the people that we have on the trips are all professional performers in some capacity. Some, are performers and something else, but everyone is a professional performer, and they all volunteer their time, and we fundraise for a lot of our own trips. That's how they're basically privately funded. But I teach Stephen at Aircraft, yeah. He can hang by his elbow. So
She's a real clown.
Yeah, a real deal right here, and a real aerialist. Tonight I'll be performing at the, I don't remember where it is, the Arts Humanity, I don't know. I'm gonna do silks for, what is they called?
Artists for Humanity?
Yeah, that's the thing.
That's a cool space.
Right there. Be there tonight. And the gold. I was considering wearing the weird gold costume because it's it's James Bond themed. It's a fundraiser for the Boys and Girls Club, and I was like, maybe I should just wear it and be like, I got to go to a gig afterwards. But I don't know. I didn't go there. It's uncomfortable.
Well, thanks everyone. I mean,
Yeah,
we
thank you
really
so
hope
much.
that you can spread the word about, the type of clowns that we are and the type of work that we're doing. We think it's important. That's why we volunteer for the organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
And thank you,
Alex.
Stephen.